have you on the show today because I was fascinated about the work that you do, and especially the work around voice and leadership. And because a lot of the themes that I find in the work that I'm doing have to do with finding your voice as a leader, I thought a conversation with you would be just super for the audience today. So, before we even get started, and what are we talking about, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do and how you got into doing what you do.
Okay, so I'm Jimmy Cannon, and I've been a singer performer for a very long time. And how did I get into it? I thought I would. I needed to find out more about the voice. So I studied it. I studied the voice. I did a master's in voice pedagogy at the
Hmm.
University of Wales. I don't speak
Oh.
Welsh. I got offered quite a few jobs teaching singing, and I wanted to find out more about the voice. I ended up speaking to somebody at a party who's an ad exec, I believe, just a random guy I was talking to, and he said, "Look, we have to do presentations weekly, and we don't get any training, and I am really nervous when I have to get up and speak." And I just thought, this is interesting. I could study this more. So I ended up researching and taking my research down a rabbit hole, really, as we do, towards performance anxiety and public speaking anxiety. And I ended up studying acceptance and commitment therapy, so it's behavioral therapy as well as the voice. So there's a combination, sort of a holistic approach of the voice and behavioral therapy over the last 15 years. Quite a summary. That's how I started. So I thought I would be speaking to eloquent, controlled people like yourself who are in control of their voice and can project their voice. You're
That's
laughing.
funny. It makes me laugh.
Okay, well, professional speakers are
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that talk a
semblance of
lot.
control, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought I would be working with people, and I did and I still do, but the majority of people come to me with a complaint or a symptom of normally a somatic or physiological symptom about their voice. And they come to me and say, Jimmy, I've got a weak voice. I just don't speak. I avoid speaking if I can. So that's the beginning. So then that's why I studied acceptance and commitment therapy. And I've been spending the last 10 years researching and looking into the connection between the voice and the anxiety that causes the voice to shut down. This is the thing. We have not a lot of control over the anxiety and that we experience. And it could be, as you said, it could be that we're completely versed in speaking. We have a very, experienced speakers that are just freeze with the idea and the concept and the thought of having to do a presentation or a speech. There are three heightened areas of anxiety. And the first one is when you're given the brief to speak. The second one is 20 seconds before you speak. And the third one, really interestingly, is right after you've spoken. So that sort of adrenaline rush as you've spoken, you're saying, thank you very much, good night. And then you walk off stage and you go into the green room and then you how did it go? How did it go? I'm great. It's really good. It was really
Right.
good. It was fine. It was fine. Of course it was fine. All
Or if
that sort of
someone gives you feedback, well, you could have done this. It's like,
yeah, yeah, right. Well, you could have started with a question or whatever it might be.
right.
Exactly. So all that. So it's a lot of anxiety around it. The anxiety is based on, as you mentioned, a number of things. It's fear of judgment, lack of self-worth, imposter syndrome. What if I fail? What if I forget my script? What if I fluff? What if I start speaking really quickly? What happens if I then there's the symptoms. Then there are the physical symptoms of sweaty hands, raised heart rate, heart palpitations, and behavioral scenarios where you look anxious. So that and then obviously cognitive, behavioral, and physiological. All of those three omit really a diagnosis of social anxiety, and under that social anxiety is public speaking anxiety and performance anxiety. So how do you manage? How do you mitigate? Well, firstly, you will never get rid of the anxiety. So it will always be there because we are, our body, our flight fight response or fight flight response, if you like, is indelible. I mean, it's ingrained in our human nature, in our DNA. So it's always there. What we can do is we can mitigate it, we can manage it. And so here's an interesting thing. So my method is voice, presence, and confidence. So if you improve the quality of your voice, there's lots of research that I've done which tells me that by firstly taking a slow in breath and releases endorphins and lowers the heart rate. So a very deep breath through the nose, Russian technique, Boteka technique through the nose. I know we're limited in time, so we can't go
No,
into
this is great. No.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, so that very here's a quick
Yeah.
exercise.
Practical. That's
Is that
perfect.
okay? Great. So if you take just before you're about to speak, so just as you were asking me that question, I was taking a slow breath in through the nose. You probably didn't notice, I would imagine. So I was doing it, but I was doing it silently. So if you do it silently, you allow the larynx to relax as you're doing it. And that's a direct connection from the vagus nerve to the diaphragm and the abdominal muscles. So as you're taking a breath in, the abdominal muscles should be contracting and lowering, and the diaphragm contracts as you do that. So taking a silent breath gives you more of a direct connection. So let's do it together now. So silent. This is going to be radio silence for anybody listening. But if you're in the car, if you're on the train, listening to the podcast, this is a great opportunity to do it. Just for 5 seconds. Here we go. Breath through the nose. Try to do it silently without making any noise. Here we go. And breathe in. Great. Hold it for a few seconds and let it out. Now, if you do
Silently.
that, what's that say again?
Silently.
Yeah, well, you can do it silently. Yeah, ideally silently. Otherwise,
Right,
people
right,
get
right.
head turning. But so that just that 2 or 3 times before you speak will lower the heart rate, release endorphins. And now the interesting thing is that while you're speaking, if you use that breath, because most people don't take enough breath in. So they need to take enough breath in. They need to then know how to control that breath. And that's practice. And it's controlling the amount of breath, the rate of breath that comes out. And you do that with the abdominal muscles and creating what's called subglottal pressure. As you speak, if you elongate the phrase, if you lengthen the phrases of the vowels. So if I give an example, if I'm speaking now, I'm using the whole breath and I'm elongating the vowel sounds as I'm speaking, so I'm slowing down my speech. I then take another breath, but I'm using that entire breath as I'm speaking. Depending on the phrase that you're using, I'm still haven't taken a breath. I'm now using it still to the end, and then I take a breath. Now that elongated breath actually connects the sympathetic nervous system and actually says you don't need to be nervous. You can relax.
Hmm.
So just those two things, deep in breath and a connected breath on the out breath while you're speaking, will reduce the anxiety. There's lots of physical exercises that we do that connect the cognitive to the body, to the physiology.
It's interesting when you talk about this. Obviously, we hear this phrase "just breathe." There's something to
Mm,
that, right? I mean,
yeah.
obviously, when just breathe when you're feeling nervous,
Hmm.
but there's something that we don't really pay attention to, which is so powerful, is the somatic connection to the brain, right? And
Yeah.
so that's really what I'm hearing you talk about
Mm.
is that there is a connection to how your body is responding to what's going on in your mind in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the breath is incredibly key. So whenever I'm working with clients, it's the first thing. It's the first module on my course. Don't mean to sell my course, but it's
No,
it's the
but
first thing.
it's
Yeah, it's
important.
incredibly important. It's the first thing that we do. So breath, if we're nervous, we have short upper chest breaths. So we need to first think about let's take the energy away from that area and put it down into the belly. So you might have heard diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. They're all the same thing. To be really accurate, it's not diaphragmatic breathing because we're actually using our abdominal muscles to push the air up into the lungs and push the diaphragm up. The diaphragm actually only works on the in breath. So it's a muscle that contracts and allows the lungs to expand, changes pressure in the lungs. So the breath is incredibly important, and most people are not using enough breath. They're not controlling the out breath, and they're not using a breath also to pause while they're speaking. It's incredibly important. And so another tip for you is that there's areas that you can there's points in within the conversation or presentation where you can use your breath to pause. So if you find that you're trying to catch up with your cognitive thoughts, so you're trying to catch up with the message in your head, which is the one of the big challenges for people, especially people that are in IT, or they're very academic, or they're very data driven, they're and or leaders who are,
Yeah.
they're quick minded, they're
Brain
intelligent.
is going faster than their body
Brain
can
brain
keep
is going
up.
faster than your body can keep up.
Yep.
So that's right. So we have to let the body catch up. We have to realize that there's a lot of action, a lot of muscular action needs to occur before we can create the speech. The speech is the idea, the message that we're trying to deliver. That's the only way. It's apart from obviously from you know notes or language, other elements of language. It's the speech that is the most effective way, verbal communication, to communicate our ideas and voice our message, if you like, or voice our ideas. So we have to allow that mechanism to catch up. If you like, it's thousands of years old, millions of years old. So we have to allow that to happen. So one way of doing that is to take a breath. So if you find yourself having to catch up with those ideas, take a 2 second breath. There's research to say that I think it's 5.6 seconds. I could be wrong. It's around about 5 seconds where people start to think that you may be having a cardiac arrest if you if you take a breath or if you pause. So you'll remember the if you like infamous Steve Jobs 96, I think it was, where he's asked a poignant, controversial question about what has he been doing for the last 7 years, which is a two-part question. And I believe it's around 11 seconds that he takes to start thinking about how he's going to answer it. So it's really important that the pause and to use the breath to take that pause. It gives you credibility. It allows you to process what you're going to say and to think about and plan and strategize what you're going to say, and also for the other person or your audience or the listeners to digest what you said before that and allow that process to happen. So it's a two-way communication channel, really.
Yeah, what's interesting about what you just said, Jimmy, I'm picturing people that I work with, and one of the things that they will say is, "Wow, it just seems like there's so much silence." When in fact,
Mm.
that small amount of it's much smaller, I think, than people
That
think.
we realize.
Right.
Also, the breath will eradicate as much as possible any filler words, which unfortunately can be detrimental to the credibility of your speech and your delivery. And we all, I mean, I do all the time. I did it. I just realized I did it then with and actually I used to have a stutter. So one of the reasons I started getting into this was my stutter, because like a lot of people, I get very excited and passionate about what I'm talking about. So again, my brain is there. I mean, it's already said what I wanted to say. So I have to take some time. I have to take some time to pause. It's incredibly important, incredibly powerful, and incredibly important to do.
Yeah. Well, all of these things are real, and we know as you're talking, people have experienced these things. Talk to me a little bit about, since we're talking about the voice, we'll stay there for a minute, inflection and tone.
Mm.
And so obviously, some of us speak in a monotone or the voice is kind of high. Or
Yep.
how do you work with that or those
So
things?
we absolutely. I have three elements or pillars, if you like, that I explain to my clients, which are number one is pitch or pitch range, and we can quickly break that down. And number two is tone or quality of voice, and number three is dynamics. So that's the louds and the quiets. And because I've been a singer and a musician for
Right.
most of my life, I equate that really to music and how Shostakovich, I think, said the answer to monotony is variety, or something on those lines. I
Mm.
can't quite remember the exact quote, but that's really, really poignant in that we have to engage with variety for us to engage our audience with our message. And so we're looking at achieving a variety of tone, pitch, and dynamics. So very quickly,
Yeah.
pitch wise, we're generally using about around 20% of our potential vocal range. Men generally speak in their chest voice, and women generally speak in their head voice. Unfortunately, society has deemed women who speak in a high head voice often not as credible or not as authoritative as women that speak in more of a chest voice. So, if I may use you
Yeah.
as an example, is that would that be okay? You have, whether you know it or not, you have a good control over both your chest voice and what's also your mix. So where you just went, yeah, and that's yeah, that's your mix, which is a mix between the two voices, but
Mm.
predominantly you're in your chest voice. So you have an authority to you, and that's probably because you're confident in what you do,
Mhm.
and that translates in your voice. So transversely, if you can create a more dominant sounding authoritative, and I apologize for for society, you know,
Right.
expectation
It's not
society.
your impression.
It's not
It's
my
the
impression.
real
It's
impression that
yeah,
we're talking about here. Right.
exactly. So if we can evoke and we can tap into that more chest resonance, then it's going to give you a more authoritative, more credible sounding voice.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean you have to speak very low all the time. If you do, you know, it just means that you have to have that tonality in your voice. So it's not. So this is where pitch and tone mix. It's not necessarily about speaking in a low pitch. It's about having a quality to your voice, and that's what's called chest resonance.
Mm.
So you know, and there's loads of exercises to get into that area. And but you also use what's called a mix or blend. So you're blending in between the two, which means that you've got a variety in your voice. Now, if we were to work with each other, which I don't think you need to, but you know, if we were to work with each other, I would say, well, look, let's experiment maybe in extending that range. So you could go a little bit higher, you could go maybe a little bit lower. So there's lots of areas of voice where you can go a little bit higher and you can come down and you can go right down there into your chest voice and you could experiment with that and it really gives a variety to the delivery in with it through your message and that's pitch and tone if you like. Well, tone, so tone is resonance, so that's pitch or register. So if we talked about tone, there are so I use sort of a metaphor really of different characters. So I have I'll get close to the mic. I have my vicar voice here, and if you're in the UK, you will know that vicars always speak like this. And thank you so much for coming. This is my very chesty, very open, breathy sound. It's kind of like a late night DJ sound,
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what it sounds like.
right. You were thinking that, right? So
Right.
that sound there. But also you can, this is called a resonance ladder, all right? So that's my chest. I can go into my throat, and a lot of people speak from their throat. So it's after a while that can get a little bit too much, a bit grating maybe for listeners. And also it can ruin your voice after a while. So if you're doing lots of podcasts, lots of speaking, lots of meetings, lots of conferences, and you're speaking from your throat, it's going to be difficult to maintain that for long. If you're in your oral cavity, so if you're speaking very, very close to your what's called your bilabials, your lips, and you're making a much more forward placement to the sound, that can be quite inviting. So people want to listen to that more than
Intimate.
they.
Sounds,
It's a bit
yeah.
more intimate, and that
Right.
more than speaking from here, from the throat, and possibly from speaking from down there. And then you can get into your nasal passages. This is a way. This is some people speak there, right? You know, okay. And you know, you probably don't want to be in there all the time. I don't know why I'm doing a kind of a Brooklyn sound. You know, that accent. I'm terrible at accents. I'm not an accent coach, thank God. You know, so that, and then you can get in your head voice. So men are generally not in there, but some women are there, and they can come down into their mix, and they can come down into their chest. This is the resonance ladder, and we're going all the way down. So, and also, and the lowest pitch is your creak. So a lot of people go into their creak, and that can be culturally detrimental as well if you're in there too often. But that is an actual register or mode, if you like, of voice. So there's a lots of ways to
Wow.
explore, yeah, your instrument, which is your voice.
So I'm thinking as you're talking that most people, most of us don't really even think about our voice. And
Sure.
just the fact that you have provided some insight into just what you just did, where you
Mm,
showed the different places of the voice, is incredibly powerful because it
mm,
makes you think about where am I and what am I using. Now, of course, learning how to do that is another thing, and that's where you come
mm.
in. If people want help with that, that you're the person to ask or to get to. But
Mm,
let me ask you this. What about confidence?
mm. Really interesting.
Thoughts?
Okay, my thoughts on confidence are I'm going to pause for a while. I have loads of thoughts on confidence. Confidence is, and I've started not using the word authenticity. I've started using the word sincere.
Yeah, I agree with
And
you.
yeah, and I believe that that word represents the idea and the concept of being confident, a confident person, better than authenticity.
I agree.
And for me, if you can find, the irony is that most people come to me about their voice, but it's normally nothing to do with their voice. And actually, if there's a clinical issue, if they've got a muscle dysphonia or nodules in their voice, I refer them to a pathologist or, excuse me, if there's something wrong clinically with their voice, I refer them to an ENT or a pathologist. I'm not going to treat them. It's generally psychological. It's generally about they don't feel confident in themselves. They don't feel confident in their ability. And for some reason, it could be way back at school, it could be an experience that they had, a behavioral experience. It could be that they were always told that they weren't good enough. All of these concepts and ideas, and that comes out in their voice. So if you have a weak voice, if you have a if your voice is saying I'm going to stop speaking, I'm
Yep.
going to shut down, I'm going to avoid that, I'm going to avoid putting my hand up and saying yes, I'll take that training session, I will lead that conference, I will speak up in the meeting. You're avoiding, which is a behavioral response, so you're avoiding that situation, that scenario, to improve your life, and that comes out through your voice. So having a better voice, having a more mellifluous, more controlled voice will give you confidence
Mm.
directly. I mean, it will literally give you confidence. So
Yeah.
it's communicating directly to the sympathetic nervous system to do that.
So
And
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
no, no, carry on, no, please, yeah.
Yeah, no, I because I know we're out of time.
Mm,
I just wanted to say how obvious it is as you speak, the integration of all of these things. It's
mm,
not voice or confidence, it's or presence. It's all
yeah,
of those things combined together, what you mentioned earlier. So
yes,
I would
exactly.
ask you, as
Mm,
we close here,
mm,
what parting words of wisdom would you give to
mm.
people listening who are taking these concepts and thinking, okay, so how do I do better? How do
Well,
I
one
better?
absolutely. Well, one thing I did want to add, and within acceptance and commitment therapy, we and you'll know all about this because you're a leadership coach. y- we need to work towards our values. So we need to have committed action towards our values, and our values represent what is important to us. So rather than thinking, what happens if I fail? What happens if I fluff my words? Why not say, I'm going to acknowledge the anxiety that I feel, but I'm going to do it anyway, regardless of what might happen, and I'm going to speak with confidence because I believe in myself, I believe in my message, and I believe that I can make a difference and I can make a change in the dynamic or the society or the cultural area that I'm in within my industry. And I think that's the key. And once you have made that change in your mind, then the voice will catch up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that such words of wisdom. I would say, it's the question, how can I serve?
Mm,
Is really what I'm hearing you echo.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's very major.
Mm, mm.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
My
I
pleasure.
it just time just flew by. We
I
could
know.
I could talk to you
Again.
all day, seriously, and I'm not just saying that. It's
Yeah.
just fascinating, and I'm sure um, people listening will be fascinated by what the gems that you offered today. And we will link all your information so that if people want further information, they can contact you directly. Thank you very much.
Fabulous, my pleasure.